Hi there, my name is Ivory Jean. I am from Sorcery the Source. I am a intuitive tarot reader, healer, and spiritualist. And here today, I am talking to you a little bit about the pastor-daughter to professional witch pipeline. And in general, we're just going to talk about the intersections of spirituality and Christianity from someone who was raised by Christians, by pastors, and who now has a job in professional witchcraft. Now, I just want to say as a disclaimer, I am not against Christianity. I am not against Christians. I am not against God. I am only here to share my experience as someone who was raised in the church and has been out of it for over a decade now. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I do. And whenever I tell people my job, they're like, what? You can do that as a job? I am, for a better word, a professional witch. What I do is more like holistic therapy, but I do so by using witchcraft. I do so by using tarot cards for divination. I am a practicant of Hoodoo. Hoodoo is an African American tradition that was created by enslaved people to fight their way to freedom. So a lot of protection work is what I'm skilled at, a lot of defense work, a lot of cleansing and spiritual work as well. I help various women, non-binary people, men, whoever, move through subconscious and personal blockages that they have using tarot cards. And I also do teachings about witchcraft in general. So teachings about root work, about a little bit of herbalism, and a little bit of spiritual cleansing, and teaching how to read the tarot. I have been doing this job for the last 4 years professionally. I've been reading since I was 15. People always ask how I got started reading, and I really just taught myself. I got a tarot deck and then started looking up meanings and doing readings for myself, and then eventually started doing readings for other people and found out that I had a little bit of a gift when it came to reading situations, reading relationships, and giving advice on what you should do moving forward. Whenever I talk about my work, people always find it interesting because it's just an interesting topic in general. I mean, witchcraft is something that a lot of people fear. It's something that a lot of people don't understand. It's something that a lot of people want to understand. Mixed reactions is usually what I get when I start talking about my job. But where I live in Mexico, it's actually usually very positive reactions. And I think that's because of the spiritual nature of the place. I'm especially asked when they find out my job, it's like, where are you from? What do your parents do? What do your family and parents even think about what you do? And the very interesting part about it is that my parents are both Southern Baptist pastors. They used to be TV evangelists, and I'll get more into their background and background on the church, but they're big time pastors, big time in the church. They raised us all to be religious. So me being a professional witch is not really their favorite, but that's something I'll kind of discuss later on. I don't have as much contact with them as other people might have with their parental units. But I do find my upbringing to be a very, very important part in even the reason that I do my job. So that's sort of what I wanted to talk about today. And that's what I meant by the whole pastor's daughter to professional witch pipeline. So let's go. So when I say pastor's daughter, I mean raised in the church every Sunday, every Wednesday, forced to go. It was not really a life without church in the minds of my mother and father. My father actually made an entire business out of starting churches and collecting tithes from people. Now, I know that sounds crazy. It sounds a little bit bad. It is. He definitely exploited the needy, which I'll get to a little bit more in detail later on. But he wanted to raise his whole family to essentially be disciples. My mom even became a pastor because he wanted her to be a pastor as well. I have 3 older brothers. He wanted all of them to be pastors and wanted me to be a pastor in addition to that. And when I say every Sunday and Wednesday, I mean every mother bleeping Sunday and Wednesday. Like, no choice. No, I don't really want to go this week. I don't really feel like going. I don't feel good. I feel sick. Even if you're physically sick, my father would still wake you up and force you to go. And they used to be TV evangelist pastors. So for those of you who don't know what TV evangelism is, it is the pastors that are on like TBC, or not TBC, but TBN. And the different networks, and they're talking to people and saying, come to our church, come give tithe to so-and-so, come for your salvation, we'll help you get rich. And this was, TV evangelism was a huge thing, especially in the 90s, which is when my parents were really doing this. During the 80s and 90s in Anchorage, Alaska, they had a huge church, a mega church with thousands and thousands and thousands of members. So my dad was pretty good at drawing in a crowd. I think that he is a narcissist. I can't diagnose, but from the experiences I had in my childhood, I believe that both of my parents were. But if you know anything about narcissists, you know that narcissists are very charming and are very good at getting people to see things their way. They're very glib. So my dad ended up compiling this huge mega church, so much so that when I was a baby, my face was on TV. It was like, here's the daughter of Pastor Blank and Pastor Blank. I'm not going to say my real given last name because I don't want to put everything on blast, but my relationship with my parents was always a rocky one, especially because I think they could tell from a young age that I was not going to be as docile as some of my brothers would. I wouldn't go along with having to go to church. I would actually rebel. I would pretend that I wasn't at the house, as if like, where else would I go? I had such a strict childhood growing up because of the Christianity. I definitely could not watch Harry Potter. I could not have sugar cereal because that was of the devil. I could not do Halloween because that was of the devil. There were so many things that were of the devil. Pokemon, of the devil. Someone told my mom that Pokemon meant demon in Japanese, so I was not allowed to play with any of those things. Anytime I had any type of event, it was a church-centered event. So all of my friends were friends from the church, which creates a weird power dynamic when your parents are the pastors. A lot of kids don't really want to be your friend. My relationship with my parents was one of the hardest relationships that I have had in my life. It's taken a lot of shadow work. It's taken a lot of healing, and I still have healing to do around my experiences that I had as a child. I was the only girl in a family of 3 boys, and they were all much older than me. And the megachurch actually ended about 3 years after I was born, so not that long after. The very first big church ended, but my dad continued to create churches wherever we went. So church was the biggest theme of my life growing up. Christianity, God, and Jesus is all we really talked about. Now, my parents are not currently in my life. I have not seen my parents for the last 8 years, and we haven't spoken for the last 3 years. And that is because I honestly see my parents as some of my biggest abusers. Although my mom has tried to kind of apologize for certain things, I just haven't been ready to be in contact with her. My dad is more of like a psychopathy type of narcissist, so he doesn't even really know to pretend to apologize, and I prefer not to have contact with him either. So my current relationship with my parents is non-existent. And this kind of leads me to talking about the fact that I do believe that what I do is hereditary, at least in my case, that my skills as a reader and as a healer do come from my parents, even though they use their skills and tools for evil. Now, if you are spiritual in any way, you probably know about karmic paths and karmic relationships. Karmic paths are the energy and the karma that we have brought from past lives that needs to be healed and paid back in this life. Because no life is without karma. Whatever deeds you do in one life, you're going to have to pay for them eventually. That is known as your karmic debt. And your karmic path is meant to be clearing out all of that karmic debt. So let's say you were a womanizer in a past life. In a next life, you might end up being a woman who constantly has really bad relationships with really misogynistic men. That could be your karmic path. You're meant to learn a lesson from your karma. This also applies to your bloodline and your lineage. So sometimes you are paying off the sins of your fathers. You are paying off things that they did during their life, people that they hurt. It is now your responsibility because the energy has to go somewhere. It has to be processed. So that leads me back to talking about my parents, the megachurch leaders, the people who obviously did something right in terms of knowing how to heal or having a healing energy, of being counselors, essentially, of drawing people in. But they use that energy for bad, for evil. They use that to exploit people, to get tithe money from them, and to have bigger houses, bigger everything. Eventually, the church shut down completely out of the blue. They still don't really talk about what happened. I think that my dad got found out for stealing because we moved from Alaska to Atlanta. I also had on my dad's side, both of his parents were pastors as well. I remember my grandma having the most healing energy. She is actually someone in my family that I hold really dear. But that being said, my whole family has this ability to heal. It just really depends on how they decided to use it. For a long time, I felt like I was cursed. And I eventually found out that was because I was meant to break a generational curse on my family. And that generational curse was of backbiting, of doing people dirty and being miserable, of bad mental health, of your talents never really being used or optimized because of financial and mental issues. Growing up, I hated Christianity because I wanted to do art stuff. I wanted to be weird in a field. I wanted to be free. And Christianity for me just felt like what was constricting me. In reality, it was my parents, but they were using Christianity to do so. There have been times in my spiritual path where I have been down bad, where I've been down and out, where I've been searching for answers, and also wondering why it was my job to carry this burden. But there came a time when I realized that all of my family has this gift of healing, of music also, of being artists in some way. But a lot of us have not really reached our full potential because of this generational curse. I found out me clearing up my karmic path and clearing up the karmic debt of my family and of myself from past lives means me being a very ethical healer. This is why I will never exploit clients. This is why I will never lie to clients. This is why I will never lie about mediumship. I am meant to approach my work life with a great amount of integrity. And I just find it really interesting how I went from being a pastor's daughter and raised in the church and honestly hating Christianity, which meant in turn kind of hating spirituality, to being a spiritualist for my job. Now, Hoodoo, the practice that I practice, is actually strongly related to Christianity. I'll explain more about this later on, maybe if I do more podcasts, but a part of why is because a lot of the time when people were brought over from Africa, slaves, enslaved people, when we were brought over, we were stripped of our traditional practices and religion and instead meant to follow a white God or Jesus. This was because slave masters or people that were enslaving did not want people that were enslaved to have any amount of power over the people that were keeping them captive. Even if there was church services, there needed to be a slave master watching over to make sure they were teaching the word of the white God, of the white Jesus, teaching them that whiteness was good, brownness was bad, And that was why we were being punished, essentially. It's really fucked up. It's horrible. But because of that, and because of the church being forced on us, that's why today you'll still see a lot of African Americans who are Christian and who don't even fully understand why. It's just something that's always been in their family. And it is also why in Hoodoo, you will see Psalms used as spells. So the book of Psalms is something that I read almost every day, and I am not a Christian. But the entire book of Psalms is a very, very powerful spell book. And I'm going to put a link to this in the description as well, so you guys can go and see and check out how so. But that's just one of the many ways that Christianity and Hoodoo are linked. If you're from the South, if you know anything about the South, a lot of Southern church ladies that will wear all white, that's another thing of Hoodoo. There's a lot of stuff that people do that we don't really realize is Hoodoo. We do Hoodoo. Now, I want to talk more in depth on another podcast about what Hoodoo is, why I practice it, and what it means to me. But I'm here to talk about how it's so interesting that I ended up being a spiritualist when at one point, because of my upbringing, I was an atheist. And in fact, I ended up following a spirituality that literally uses the Bible, this thing that was used as a tool of trauma, as a weapon against me, essentially. A little bit of background about who I am. I am queer, I am a Black person, and I am non-binary. I'm also alternative. If you've seen me before in person, you know I'm always covered in tattoos. I got a lot going on. I am not really what you would picture as someone who is accepted by the church or someone who reads the Bible, and yet I do. I read the Bible because I know that the tool is what has the magic, not the people behind it. My parents were healers, using their tools for evil. With my practice in Hoodoo, being a Hoodoo practitioner and teaching other people to do the same, I'm able to clear my karmic path and honestly able to heal some of my religious trauma. If you would have told me 5 years ago that I'd be using a Bible, please. And another facet of that is so interesting is the people that will say, oh, that's witchcraft, that's of the devil, that's evil. When in reality, Hoodoo and Christianity have so much in common. And it's why it feels so familiar for me. Let me know if that's something that you want to talk more in depth about in another podcast. This is actually my first episode. Thank you so much for joining. But I just wanted to do a little intro, and I did a poll on Instagram asking what people wanted to talk about. And the topic of being raised Christian, but being a professional witch comes up a lot. So, to make a long story short, no, me and my parents are not close. But yes, I have learned a lot from them. And I still learn a lot through their Christianity and through my Hoodoo. I think a lot of people that are very strictly, intensely Christian want you to believe that everything else is bad and want you to believe that there's no blending of practices and that Christianity is one in its own and there is only one God. I'm just here to introduce you to the fact that maybe that's not true. Maybe there's nothing evil about bathing yourself in herbs. Maybe the book of Psalms can be used as a book of spells. Maybe spells aren't used to harm, but they're used to empower. I have clients who have completely changed their life because of a deck of cards. And it's not just the deck. It's the comfort in knowing about your subconscious patterns and paths that come out in the tarot. It's the comfort of being seen. It's the comfort of being able to take your healing into your own hands. My life in Christianity was miserable. It was constricting. It was a feeling of being trapped. And my life inside Hoodoo is free. That's not to say that it's bad to be Christian. It's just to say that just because religion isn't working for you doesn't mean that spirituality can't. And both of them are very tightly wound, meaning intertwined, meaning very similar, meaning the same shit. talk a little bit more about how my life was inside of Christianity and how my life is inside of Hoodoo in future episodes. But I just wanted to do this little short introduction for us to get acquainted. It is beautiful to meet you. My name is Ivory Jean with Sorcery the Source. I do tarot readings and divination, spell work, meaning sweetening spells, meaning cleansing work and protection. And I am an overall healer who used to be a pastor's daughter. I guess I still kind of am a pastor's daughter. They're still pastors and I'm still their daughter. But I just want to share some things with you about my path in hopes that it could inspire you. Anyone else who might be stuck in the tango of the church or stuck in the shame of Christianity, I'm here for all those types of talks. And I really hope that we're able to grow together and I can continue doing this podcast. Thank you so much. I'm going to put my links in the description to my Instagram, my TikTok, where you can find out more information about me and my practice and where to get a reading or working. Bye-bye.